people without knowledge of their history, culture, and origin, it is like a tree without roots. My opinion, it is the program that you are watching, and my name is Fred. The topic that we'll be discussing today, it is youths in culture. And in the studio helping me to discuss this topic, I have Robert. Mr. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
Having the topic that we are looking at youths in culture. First of all, before we go into details, I would like you to give us the general definition of how you define culture itself, and also you define it etymologically.
When you look at the word culture, it's very diverse, it's big. It's the word that we cannot easily define what culture is because of how diverse and bigger the word is. But in a simple way, we can say culture, this is the way of life of an entire society. So when we say that, what we basically mean is the practice that the society has. We're talking about what they eat and how they cook what they eat, how they conduct themselves when they are on the table eating, how they greet the visitors, what they wear and how they wear it, how they interact with one another. So basically we're talking about ideas, talking about customs and traditions that the society possesses. And we find that these are being practiced by different kind of people that are within a society. And when we look at the origin of the word culture, culture comes from the word Latin, which means cultura. And this word means to cultivate or to grow, which basically means when a person, if we had to relate it in a human society, it basically means a person, they are born without culture. But in the process of nurturing, in the process of them growing, that's the time now that they begin to adopt this culture. This can be because it was passed to them or they imitated within the surrounding that they are found in. That's the reason why a person is not bigger than the society they are found in. The society in which we are exposed shapes who we become, shapes how we think, shapes how we see the things that we see. That's the reason why it said we don't see the world or the society the way it is, we see it the way we are. Because the way we are was basically shaped, it was entirely shaped by where we grew up and the family in which we grew in. And that's how big culture is.
You said something about culture shaping society. So I would like you to shed more light, like how does culture shape the society that we live in?
Okay, so let me start with a very good example that I'm hoping everyone is familiar with. In a Zambian society, you'll find that when visitors come, we have to greet them. And when greeting them, you find you have to kneel down. And like when you go to India, to show respect to visitors and elderly people, Indians touch their feet. But in Africa, we don't do that. So it's considered to be good manners. When someone visits your home and you greet them, you kneel down. Even when you're giving something to an elderly person, in a Zambian society, good manners have been considered you have to kneel down for them. Maybe you're giving them a glass of water, you need to kneel down. But in other society, it's not like that. So that has shaped what we call good manners, or what's right and what's wrong is being shaped by the society. And that's one of the big examples. But on a larger scale, also it does determine how the society is governed as well. So you find that from one government to the other, there's one thing that you always say, there's a pattern that never changes. The reason being is because it's been shaped by culture. So when you are in Zambia and when you go to other parts of the world, you find that the practice are totally different. What they consider to be right and what they consider to be wrong will be different between those two societies, those two communities.
Okay. In most cases, you discover that there are two words which are used interchangeably, which is tradition and culture. So maybe the first question that I would ask is that is there a difference between tradition and culture?
The difference between the two words is very slim. Okay. It's almost unnoticeable. That's the reason why most people use tradition and culture interchangeably, because the difference is slight, but there is a difference. And the difference is that the bigger picture is culture. Okay. And the smaller picture, the details of that picture is what we call tradition. So we'll say culture, their ideas, their beliefs, and their customs, that are possessed by a particular society. Now the process of transmitting these ideas and customs from one generation to the other is what's called tradition. And tradition, most of the times you find they are centralized on a family level. It's a family that passes this one from one person to the other. So from one generation to the next. And you find that culture changes with changing time, with coming in of new ideas. For example, you find that in the olden days, we used to have, in the medical practice, when a person has got headache, before the discovery of these new ideas in the scientific knowledge, we used to have that a person they'll break part of their head, as in to allow some blood to come out. They used to think that was the cause of the headache. But now that we have scientific advancement, we are seeing that now we have a new theory. So we cannot practice what we used to practice because we've learned something new. So now there's a change in culture. So culture is dynamic, it's not always constant. So it's changing with the coming in of new ideas and new practices. But tradition is always constant. Yeah, it doesn't change, but culture changes. And when we try to differentiate the two, we say culture is what we believe, but tradition is how we behave. So the behaviors that we portray, that's what reflects our tradition. But how we believe, our beliefs, it can be religion or non-religion. That is what we call culture.
Okay.
Yeah.
Looking at the youths of today and culture, what does it entail of the future that we are heading to face?
First, we need to look at exactly which piece in the culture we are looking at.
Okay.
And with the adoption of the Western culture. Because when you look at our society right now as we stand, we've adopted so much from the West. The art that we practice, the music we listen to, the clothes we wear, just a lot of things, and including how we interact. Even the language that we are using right now, it's not our own. It's the language that we adopted from the Western culture, and that's what we've all adopted. Now we need to divide these into sections and dissect them and look at each one, how it entails about the future. First, there's one thing that is so much recommended and that we should admire, and that I would like that our society adopts from the Western world. It's that culture of reading. The West reads a lot. We have a lot of writers that come from that side. They invest so much in knowledge, unlike we do in our country today. If we can adopt that type of a culture where we are reading and investing more in knowledge, we invest in the technology and the tools that will help the country to develop, then we can say we have a future. We can say the future is good, including some of the governance system that not the system per se, but the type of leadership that we've been having. If we can have a leader that would dedicate themselves to the well-being of the society. And talking about other stuff like clothing, music that we listen to, and the like, I would say so much of the Western world has invaded our country. We are practicing a lot of the behavior of the Western culture, which is more likely, I think more definitely, will erase the culture of Zambia and the culture of Africa, and it will not preserve our tradition. Because as we stand right now into this society, in the olden days, even as we were growing up in the 2000 and 2001 coming down, we used to have more respect for the elders than I'm seeing right now. And now there's even rampant of kids drinking alcohol and smoking and just trying to blend in on what's happening in the Western world, and that's wasting away the lives of young people. And and the lives of those whom leadership is supposed to be upon. Because in the coming days, what we'll see is that these old people are in government, these people are in key leadership, driving our country and our continent, Africa, will no longer be there, but it will be us to take up the leadership role and to provide the knowledge that is needed for that time. But if we are not well cultured in such a way that we are able to carry the mantle and do what is supposed to be done, then we'll not be able to do that. Then the country definitely die. And what definitely this will mean is that those who are coming after us will have a poor foundation where to build their future. Because a future is not built anywhere else apart from the foundation that was built those who went before us. So if we don't lay a very good foundation, those won't do that.
Okay. So before we close the program, what advice can you give to the youths concerning culture?
Wow, since culture is dynamic and culture changes, that's one thing that is inevitable. They will definitely change with time. But what we need to focus much on is in whose benefit are we conforming. As we try to integrate more ideas in our culture, that is inevitable, just like I alluded to earlier. We will definitely change. But it's better to change for good. And exposure is everything. The more you are exposed to good knowledge, to good cultural practices, the better you become. So you need to choose the exposure in which you're exposed to when you have a choice. Because that will definitely shapes how you think and how you behave, and how you behave definitely determines your habits, and your habits will determine what the future will unfold for you and how it will become.
Thank you very much for having me on the program.
Thank you.
My opinion, it is the program that you are watching, and the topic that we are discussing, it is youths in culture. And in the studio we had Mr. Robert, who has shed more light, who has brought an enlightenment unto our lives and unto the youths out there. Hoping that you've enjoyed